A violinist friend of mine once was looking at trumpet excerpts, orchestral excerpts, and just started laughing because a lot of our excerpts are 12 bars, 16 bars. The opening of Pictures at an Exhibition is 8 measures. And they're thinking, well, how easy is this? They have 5-minute excerpts. They've got 12 billion notes to play. And we've got some quarter notes and half notes and occasional eighth notes in some of our excerpts. I think what makes it challenging is the whole problem of changing style, especially when you have such short little excerpts to play. And you have to practice being able to move easily between styles. I think in an orchestral excerpt, there's so little chance for you to define that style, that every note counts, more than for a lot of instruments. For instance, if you're playing a preliminary round at an orchestral audition, you might only have 5 excerpts to play, 3 if it's not going so well and they cut you off, which means that you've traveled maybe 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 miles, prepared for months, and you get a whole minute of playing before they send you packing. So every note counts, and you have to take advantage of being able to set the style from the very beginning. So how do we do this? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to, first of all, think about each excerpt. And in the excerpt section of this course, we'll talk about how to set that style for each individual excerpt and what the character of the excerpt is. But as you're running a list of 4 or 5 or 10 excerpts, you've got to think before you play about what the sound is that you're going to be making. For me, I always think about 2 things before I start an excerpt. The first is, what's the orchestration? What instruments am I playing with here? Because that tells me what kind of color I'm going to make, in addition to what kind of dynamic I'm going to be making. And the second thing is, what do I need to think about? What passage is going to help me understand what the rhythm is here? What's the tempo? What instruments am I playing with? Is there a snare drum I'm trying to lock into? Am I playing with trombones here? Who sets the time? Am I generating the rhythm? Is it the very beginning of a piece and it's all up to me, like Mahler 5? And by thinking about those things, what's instrumentation and what's the tempo, how do I define rhythm, you can get a great start to every excerpt. Let's take a couple of examples. Let's say you're going to be playing Leonore 3, Beethoven, and it starts in a very declamatory style. So you know you want to have a strong front to the note, good sustain, and a real seriousness to your sound. And so you'll think time, take a good breath in tempo, and make sure that that first note grabs the attention of the committee or the audience. You can hear how the beginning of that note, it just grabs you from the very beginning. And that's what you need to do to define style. For instance, if you're playing the Pines of Rome off-stage solo, the first 3 notes of that solo are going to set the style for the rest of the excerpt. So for me, getting that good start allows me the freedom to play the rest of the excerpt. And it's going to make sure that, once again, I'm making the most of those few seconds that I have to impress that committee. So how do I do this? 1, I think about the color in the strings that happens beforehand, what the orchestration is, which is this sort of shimmering sound in the strings, the fact that I'm off stage, and that that I need to play sort of extra musically because the distance is going to take away some of that beautiful phrasing that I'm trying to make. So I want to be sort of ultra phrasing here. And I want to get a connection in the first 3 notes that's going to set up this expectation for the rest of the excerpt. You hear how the style was set from the first attack. And that's another thing to think about, is how to vary those attacks. Earlier in the course, we talked about developing more than one sort of articulation. so that you can play more roughly, more accented, or more lyrically. You have to be premeditated about how you're going to use those different articulations at the beginning of an excerpt to set that style. Now, going in between excerpts is a little bit difficult too, because even if you understand how you want it to start, you've got to be able to switch gears immediately. So practicing this, routining it, is going to be the secret to being able to move between excerpts in an audition situation. I mean, face it, you're going to be a little bit nervous, or maybe a lot nervous. You're going to be feeling the moment. And so by practicing in a way that it feels like it's just part of who you are, when the nerves come in, you're still going to be able to play well. And we need to practice that. So what I like to do, instead of playing through an entire list, is I'll practice starts. So I'll have just a few seconds in between to reset, reboot my brain, to really go through and sound different in each excerpt. You could hear in each of those 4 excerpts how the first measure or 2 measures was totally different in style in the one before. And by moving quickly in between those excerpts, I'm practicing how to get those good starts. And that's what you need to do as well. So take a list, say, okay, here are 10 excerpts I'm going to play just the first bar or 2, and move quickly to the next as a test to see if you can define that style and change style very quickly. And if you can do that, you'll find yourself moving on out of preliminaries into semifinals, into finals, and hopefully sitting in that chair for the job.